Hello, I'm Bruce DuPoint. Coming up today on News Talk, what is driving the uptick in crime we're seeing locally and around the nation? And is the Metropolitan Police Force understaffed? The FOP says a wave of retirements and plummeting morale are having a big impact. Also, now that Boston has abandoned its bid for the 2024 Olympic Games, should D.C., Maryland, and Virginia reopen their campaign to host the event? We'll put these questions and others to Phil Mendelson, chairman of the D.C. Council. Also, the president makes a strong defense of the deal that the U.S. and other nations negotiated with Iran, and he urges Congress to accept the agreement, saying critics have yet to offer an alternative. We'll talk with former Congressman Jim Moran.
From News Channel 8, this is News Talk with Bruce DuPoint.
It's a very busy Thursday here in the nation's capital. Beautiful weather. Great to have you with us today. Thanks for making us part of your day. The union representing police officers in the district says the city is seeing crime go up while the number of officers on the beat drops. FOP head Delroy Burton making that charge here yesterday during an interview in which he called the mood at police headquarters toxic. As you know, the nation's big city chiefs met in D.C. this week to discuss and strategize against the uptick in crime. Joining us now to talk about these issues and more, Phil Mendelson. He's chairman of the D.C. Council. He's with us every month at this time.
Good morning, Bruce.
Good to see you again. Welcome, as always. Great to see you. What conversations have you had? What's your understanding of the challenge that police locally and in big cities around the nation are facing in terms of an uptick in the amount of crime?
Well, I was struck by the fact that at first I was impressed that the chiefs from a number of large cities got together the other day in Washington, but I was struck by the fact that as much as they talked about what was going on, they didn't seem to have ready answers for why we're seeing an increase in violent crime, not just in the district but in other major cities. Not all major cities, but a number, like Chicago, for example. And they offered a number of explanations. I'm not convinced that they've got this figured out. And it's concerning to me because we will do better if we understand what the reason is for the increase.
Tough to come up with a strategy if the
Correct.
specific causes, the specific
if the causes aren't known, then it's hard to have a strategy to fight the cause you don't know. You know, there are some who are speculating it's because of the synthetic marijuana, which is not marijuana, and yes, it's synthetic, but it's a completely different kind of drug, and it's very dangerous. And I just want to say that, I mean, it's foolish anybody who takes it because it's actually dangerous for one. There are folks who are speculating that that is a reason for the uptick. I'm not convinced that that is a reason for the uptick. One thing that I've been thinking about asking the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to do is to look at the reasons behind homicides this year and compare it with, let's say, last year or with a couple years ago, and see what's different about these homicides, if there is something different. So there's some speculation that it has to do with the synthetic drugs. There's some speculation that it has to do with an increase in gang activity. That would surprise me. It might make some sense. So, and you know, last year what I was hearing was that it was an increase in domestic violence. But while there were some deaths due to that, it wasn't a large number, and so I'm not sure what the reason is. And as I said, I'm struck that the chiefs, when they got together, didn't have a ready answer. Do
you take any comfort in the fact that it's not a D.C. problem? It's something that, I mean, there have been weekends in Chicago this summer where they have dozens and dozens of shootings,
yeah. and
really trouble. I mean, one murder is troubling. They're having many murders over the course of a compressed, short period of time.
Do I take some comfort in it? Small comfort, because the goal here is not to be like everybody else. The goal is to continue the decline in violent crime. And that should be the goal. And so there's no comfort whether we're in league with everybody else or we stand out.
We talked yesterday with the head of the D.C. Fraternal Order of Police, Delroy Burton. He said he gave us a lot of numbers, and you step back and you look at the big picture. Burton says the population is up, crime is up, but the number of officers on the beat, on the street, is down. Can you speak to that concern?
Well, and I hear you also saying that morale has never been worse. You know, the union, as much as I like unions, the union has been saying essentially the same thing for a decade. Morale's never been worse. Well, it can't be never been worse if it's been never this bad for the last 10 years. And that's not a defense other than the fact that I can tell you as a legislator who hears complaints from folks in agencies, I do not hear complaints from the rank and file in the Metropolitan Police Department the way I do in other agencies. So I don't want to be dismissive, oh, there's no morale problem at all, but I don't think there's a morale problem. There is attrition, and we knew this was going to happen. It's because there was a very large hiring that went on around 1990, 25 years ago, and so folks are eligible for retirement. We've seen this coming for a number of years. MPD has been hiring about, if I remember correctly, it's about 30 a month, and that is about the right pace. Now, we can duplicate what we did 25 years ago and go on a hiring spree. We can reduce standards, and we will see some bad cops. We don't want to reduce standards. We don't want to go through that. And it also doesn't help us in the long run if we create another retirement bubble 25 years from now. So I support the chief in bringing on roughly 30 new officers a month, but right now we're suffering from the retirement bubble.
Yesterday during our conversation, Delroy Burton, head of the DC FOP, said the mood within the agency is toxic. Let's take you back to yesterday in our discussion.
The reality is that being on the street, patrolling, dealing with citizens is the easiest part of police work. If you talk to any police officer, the most difficult part is dealing with the internal departmental problems. And this is not just as to union members. 75% of the command staff is eligible to retire also. And they are being ground down by the policies that have been established with this administration. I like the chief. She's very personable. I just disagree with her policies. And those policies, in terms of discipline, extremely heavy-handed. In terms of scheduling disruptions.
Can you speak to the issues that Delroy Burton raises there, scheduling, the style of discipline, staffing? It's a fairly broad bill of particulars.
Well, you know, actually I think the chief has complained that she's hamstrung in scheduling because of provisions in the collective bargaining agreement with the FOP. They've complained about scheduling for years, but as I said, there are restrictions in the bargaining agreement that actually tie the chief's hands.
But he pointed to all hands on deck as a
yeah,
concern.
and the union has sued the city, and they won a number of times because there wasn't the proper notice. They didn't win because it was something wrong with the initiative, and at this point, I think that's history. You know, again, I believe very strongly in organized labor, and I think it's important that the rank and file be organized and represented. But the FOP's complaints are, you know, they've said the same thing year after year for over a decade. Does that mean that the department is run perfectly? No. Does that mean that there aren't complaints or that there aren't things that could be done differently and better? No, it doesn't mean that. But it's just not as bad as the FOP would say it is.
We'll go to the phones. Your questions and comments, as always, welcome here on News Talk. We'll begin with Roxy on line 1, and if you'd like to join the conversation behind Roxy, our number here, as always, 703-387-1020. Boston was going to be, as we change gears, Boston was going to be the USOC city moving forward into the next round of competition, if you will, for the 2024 games. Boston has withdrawn because the mayor there was not willing to sign what he regarded to be and what he feared would be a blank check with the city on the hook for crossed overruns. So everyone's looking now at the 3 cities that came in second, third, and fourth behind Boston in the competition, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and the D.C. region. Should the D.C. region renew its bid for the games?
Well, the story's a little bit complicated. You know, all the cities, they presented bids. We put a lot of effort into the bid that we presented. We think we had a very good and a very strong bid. So the U.S. Olympic Committee, USOC, knows what we have to offer. There is some sentiment that the fix is in, if you will, and that Los Angeles will get it. There's not there's nothing to be gained by putting a lot of energy and cost into renewing our bid. My understanding is what has been conveyed to the USOC is, you know what we've got to offer. If you're seriously interested in us, then we're seriously interested.
But you don't want to do a ton of effort for something that's
already been decided.
Already been decided.
Yes. So we'll see. I mean, really, it's kind of up to the USOC. They know each of the cities. Nothing has changed for any of the cities other than Boston changing its mind. And so they're in a position where they can choose. They could come back and say, you know, we really are interested in you, just answer a few questions. This is up to them. And if they do that, then I'm sure we'll be responsive. I've talked to the mayor. Her view is similar to mine, and those who were leading the effort from the private sector, that's their view as well.
How excited are you about the potential that the spotlight of the world and that the 16-day athletic festival could, depending on how things go, if the fix for Los Angeles isn't in, and if we don't get, if the U.S. city, of course, doesn't get beat out by the other international cities competing for the games, how excited are you by the prospect that we could get the games? And if Mayor Bowser had to sign the sort of letter that the mayor of Boston was not willing to sign, what would your counsel to her be?
Well, actually, I believe every city had to sign the same letter or a letter of similar effect, and that was done last December by, I believe it was done by Mayor-elect Bowser and Mayor Gray. You know, we've looked at the finances. It's too far out. We're talking about 2024, so it's really hard to say very much about the finances, but the private sector was going to bear the burden for this, the cost for this. So that was not as big an issue for us. It would be great for the region if we were selected. Something that I don't know that we appreciate is that folks on the outside still see the Washington metropolitan region in terms of 30, 40, 50 years ago, and this region has changed a lot. We are very competitive. It would be great for this city and the region, and it would be an acknowledgement of how we've changed.
Not a ton of time, but let's go to the phones. As we pick up on line one, we speak with Roxy in Damascus. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, Roxy, are you still there? Do you have a question for Phil Mendelson? We may have lost Roxy. We'll get to her, hopefully, okay. Her question, her comment next month. The push for D.C. statehood, it seems, has gotten a nice a gift from HBO comedian John Oliver, and possibly, and more importantly, some new momentum. His video, 17 minutes, with a lot of humor and a lot of creativity, was sort of a takedown of every criticism that folks have made, or every skeptical notion that's been advanced when folks say D.C. should be treated equally, the District of Columbia should be a state. What did you think of that video when you saw it, and will it be more than a source of a few chuckles?
I think the video was very good, and I'm hopeful that it will have some effect. The reality is that our lack of autonomy, our lack of democracy in the district is political. It's the Republicans in Congress don't want to see a Democratic and a liberal jurisdiction have 2 seats or 2 votes in the Senate and a vote in the House. And that's the reality. And how we overcome that, I think we have to be constantly looking for different strategies. But I think his video was very good. And frankly, I think we should try to disseminate that as broadly as we can to help get the message out there.
It's had a huge huge number of people have seen it, well into the millions.
Yeah.
To the phones real quick. Roxy in Damascus, you're on the air.
She reappeared?
Not a lot of time. We found Roxy. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to take exception with Phil Mendelson's comment that you're not hearing a lot of complaints from MPD's rank and file. I can tell you the rank and file is not happy with this administration. You can blame it on the retirement. However, the new officers are leaving just as quickly. The chief runs this department with fear intimidation style, and the officers are afraid of facing discipline if they voice any concerns against her.
Thank you.
Are you doing anything to give them a nod?
Well, it's kind of hard to disagree with what I say is what I'm hearing from folks. The caller can say that there are a lot of people who are unhappy, and I can't disagree with her view that a lot of people are unhappy. I can only tell you that I hear complaints from employees in different agencies. I hear very, very few complaints from the rank and file or the senior management in MPD. I hear far more complaints from fire and EMS. I mean, I would say Roxy's is the first complaint I've heard in weeks, if not months.
Phil Mendelson is chairman of the D.C. Council. He's with us every month at this time. Thanks very much for your time. Good to see you as always. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thanks, Bruce.
Appreciate very much you being here. We'll step aside. We're back, though, with more News Talk right after this.